Hello and welcome to this segment of Arts Talk. I'm Sherri Burr, your host, and my guests for this episode are artists from the law school. Welcome Suzanne Fortner and welcome Robert Johnston. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So you two are going to be part of the spring show at the law school's not-for-profit art gallery. And we're going to start with you, Suzanne, to just have you tell us about some of the images that you've created that are going to be in the art exhibition. So tell us about the image that the audience can now see.
Okay, so the one that's showing is called The Kiss of Judas. And so it's one of 3 paintings that I had submitted. And so it just started because I just had seen, I don't know if you'd seen on the History Channel, there was a Bible series. And so it showed a suicide that's actually in the Bible. And so I just got really interested that, you know, a lot of people think that the Bible is boring and different stuff like that. But I was just so hooked on that the suicide actually written in the Bible of Judas was so graphic. And so it just really inspired me to explore more and think about that storyline and then put it in the form of painting.
Oh, great.
So.
And what medium do you work in?
I do acrylic paint on canvases.
Oh, nice, nice. So how did you get started as an artist?
I think I grew up with, my parents are both exposed me to a lot of different ways of just expressing yourself. And so I think my mom just gave me something to paint one day, and I did it, and I realized that I liked it, and it was fun, and it was just a way to, I guess, get rid of stress. And so being in law school, it's just a really good way to continue on. So that's how I got started.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have, this image is part of a series, right? So what would you say connects this image, The Kiss of Judas, with the other images that are at the law school exhibition?
So this is The Kiss of Judas, as you said. And so there were 3 things that interested me the most, which was first, how Judas hung himself. So that was the first one I did. And then I moved on to this because that is what caused Judas so much turmoil, was that he betrayed Jesus.
Right.
And so I didn't want to actually paint people. I wanted it to be more abstract, obviously, as that is. So I just started with 2 images and just kind of tried to embody in each circle, I guess, is their kind of circle-like images, how I felt each person looked in that moment of,
And are the people that you're thinking of Jesus and Judas?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea of circles being like how they are interacting and the actual betrayal and the impact of the betrayal?
Yeah. So that's exactly what it was. And so here it is just Jesus and Judas, and I think you put it better than I did in just how this moment, how these people are. So how Jesus was in that moment and how Judas was. So Judas is kind of dark and in turmoil, whereas Jesus is like this holy figure in this moment, but they're intertwining.
Okay.
So,
All right, sounds wonderful. All right, thank you. And Robert, let's talk about your creative process. So what is the medium that you work in?
So I work in digital photography mostly. I mean, I do some film, but not very often. And my creative process is usually very spontaneous. It'll be the middle of the night, and I'll think, you know, I really want to go out and get some photos of the stars, or I want to go out and get a photo of whatever it is, and I get in my car and I go.
And where do you go?
Well, I have a funny story about one of the pictures that we'll be seeing. I was planning on going to right at the tip of New Mexico and Oklahoma, there's a national dark spot where you can actually see more stars than you can anywhere else. Drove all the way there, and it was cloudy. So I was driving back, and I stopped in the Pecos and took some pictures after that. So the process didn't go as planned, but it still came out with a good image that's actually in the show.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So that's an example of going with the flow of life, right? That you can try to plan for how you want your work to evolve, but then doesn't always happen, so you have to just adjust.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. And so where are some of the other places that you have photographed?
I like to go to the Jemez. I do a lot of photos in the Jemez. I go to the backside of the Sandias. And then I also do a lot of photos just around town. The Bosque del Apache is a great place because of all the water, the low-lying areas, and all the birds that are there.
Oh, nice.
So I get a lot of pictures there, too.
Nice. And is it hard to capture birds because they're in motion?
It depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to shoot birds in motion, then you want to have a faster image. But the images that I have in the show right now are actually all long exposures so that you can see the stars moving across the sky. Because the exposure is so long that the point of light, as the stars move, it shows up on the sensor. So if there are birds that are moving within the image at that time, then you won't be able to see them.
I see.
But actually the image that I have entered, you can see all the birds on the ground because they didn't move at all. So it's really lucky.
Great.
Yeah.
And what's your training?
So I don't have any formal training in photography. I went to undergrad and I met somebody there who did digital photography, and I always wanted to have good photos of my family. So I got a camera and I thought, okay, I have a good camera, I'll be good at photography. And I realized that's not exactly how you get good at photography. So I learned from a friend who was at my undergrad, who had worked at CNN for a summer doing photos, and she taught me a lot, and I over time just kept shooting with the camera and finally came out to somewhere where I think I'm pretty good, but it's always a process and you keep learning all the time.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. And is this your first exhibition?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh, good.
I've never had any photos entered anywhere. I usually just take them and print them for friends.
Oh, okay, that's great. But your friends have reacted positively over the years, so you knew going into it that they had some value.
Yeah, or they're just nice to me and they're just reacting positively to
Yes.
make me feel good. So.
Yes. Well, and that's where, I guess, as an artist, it's helpful to have an internal sensor determinate to be able to determine internally whether you think something is worthwhile or not.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you say that because I will show people a lot of the images that I take, and some of them I will not like, and some of them I'll really like. And the ones that I don't like, they'll be like, that's a perfect picture. And, but I'll be able to find little tiny things that nobody else would notice except for other photographers that probably aren't as good in the pictures.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I see. Good. Okay, so we're filming before an audience of law students, and some of them might have questions about your work. So we're going to take a moment and see. Oh, and Jameson has the mic, so he obviously has a question.
Hi, I have a question for Robert. Do you use post-photograph digital editing?
I do. I try to limit it when I'm doing landscape photos, just because I think that the earth and everything kind of paints a pretty picture by itself. When I'm shooting portraits and things, I usually use it to touch up any loose hairs or anything like that. But it's useful for bringing out colors and things that maybe you didn't get the exposure right on a certain part of the image, although the rest of it's fine. So yeah, I use Photoshop and GIMP.
My question is for both of you. Who or what inspires you?
Okay, so I would say that just traveling gave me a lot of inspiration. So I don't know if I could point to one specific person because I think that it's more like stories that inspire me. But this summer I went to Europe, and so I went to all the big museums like the Louvre and Musée d'Orsay. And so just seeing things like that and trying to figure out what the artist was trying to tell all of us just really inspired me. Okay.
That's great.
And for me, the specific person is Ansel Adams. He did a lot of really great black and white photos, really high contrast, really great depth to his photos. And then just more generally, I really like National Geographic. They do really great images of really exotic places, and so I try to replicate something like that with what I can do here in New Mexico.
You know, and Ansel Adams is known for Moonrise over Hernandez is one of his most famous because within this image in New Mexico, he caught both the sun and the moon, which is so unusual to capture in a single image. So I bet he would be thrilled to know that he's still inspiring photographers, even though you work in color and he worked primarily in black and white.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, other questions from the audience? Oh, Dominique.
Yeah, so it seems to me that both of these media, painting and photography, would take sort of a lot of time to get really good at them. So as law students, where do you guys find the time to sort of hone your crafts?
Well, I think that's really interesting that you ask that, just because actually if I don't find a way to do this during law school, I get way more stressed out. And so this is actually, I find that the more stressed out I am, the more I find myself painting. So during law school, everyone gets paintings for presents.
Oh, nice.
But yeah,
Oh,
so.
that's nice. Yeah. That's great.
And for me, it's also kind of a stress relief. You can ask my fiance is here in the audience, and pretty much every day I'll say, let me take a picture of that. That's cool, let me take a picture of that. So it's a stress relief that way. Also, when school's not in session during the summer, that's the best time because I can go out on Monday night at 1 in the morning, drive wherever I want, and take pictures.
So you're really into basically moonlight photography, would you say? You like shooting at night?
Yeah, not necessarily moonlight photography. It's actually kind of difficult to shoot when the moon is out because it is so bright. I like it when there's no moon because then you can see all of the stars and you can get the motion of the stars, which is really the motion of the Earth moving around the galaxy.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, not
But
necessarily.
you like
with the moon.
night photography?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Other questions from the audience?
I have another question. Do either of you guys have a particular current dream or inspiration that you want to paint next or take a photograph of next, just by chance?
Go ahead.
I almost always have a next idea. So the other day I saw, so just a strange thing, but I saw an orange just sitting on my counter, and there was like the little leaf still in it, and I just kept staring at it, and I was thinking I really wanted to paint it. So yeah, even though it's just a fruit, I just saw something beautiful.
I think the thing I really want to photograph is the perfect picture. And I know that sounds really weird, but every picture you take, you think it's going to be great, and it comes out fine. Like I said, a lot of people will think that it looks great, but you'll always see something that you want to change. And for me, I really like doing portraits of people when the sun is setting, but I don't feel like I've ever gotten the perfect picture where they're exposed perfectly, the background's exposed, and it gives kind of a dramatic look. So I'm still working on that one.
Yeah, it's kind of what Robert Mapplethorpe called the perfect moment. That as a photographer, always looking for the perfect moment between subject and light.
Yep.
Thank you, too, for being here for this segment to talk about your artwork. I think people will be very excited to see your process as exhibited in the show. And thank you, the audience, for joining us for this segment of Arts Talk with Suzanne Fortner and Robert Johnston. And we'll be back.